Vampire Hunter D by Hideyuki Kikuchi. So, Vampire Hunter D, if you did not know, is a series of pulp novels from Japan. A pretty long running series of books, actually. I think the first one was published in like 1983, and they are actually, apparently, among the best selling book series of all time, with, I believe, somewhere in the neighborhood of like 17 million copies sold, which is a real feat. But I was familiar with these books thanks to the films that have been based upon them, the anime films, which I'm going to talk about. Um, but this review is only going to be of the first book in the series. This is the first omnibus collection of this book series. There are a lot of books in this series, and this omnibus here collects the first three. And this is published by Dark Horse Books, which is a subsidiary of Dark Horse Comics, just as an aside. But Vampire Hunter D is a book that I can say is objectively not very good, but which I thoroughly enjoyed nonetheless because of just how fun it is. I had such a blast reading this book, and I'm going to tell you all about it. So, what is the story of Vampire Hunter D? What is this book about? So, the setting of these books I found highly intriguing. It takes place in a distant future in like the year 12,000 something after a devastating apocalyptic nuclear war, and vampires have emerged from the shadows and have kind of shepherded humanity out of a post atomic dark age and into a pretty highly technologically advanced future. And the vampires in this book are referred to as the nobility. They function kind of like feudal lords in a sense, and they live in like retro gothic castles and such. But what I love about the setting of this book is that it is a veritable smorgasbord of pulp. Hideyuki Kikuchi really threw it all in here. You've got vampires, you've got werewolves, you've got robots, you've got mutants, and also there are lots of shades of westerns in here. I mean, it really does almost have like a touch of everything, and I just really love that because it made for a very interesting setting, if nothing else. But the plot of this first book in this series is that there is a young girl, I think she's like 17 in the book, named Doris Lang. And she has found herself the object of the twisted affections of a local vampire lord named Count Magnus Lee. He is dead set on converting her to one of the undead and making her his unholy bride. But she decides to hire D, the titular vampire hunter D, a mysterious, wandering, and incredibly handsome warrior whose job is to exterminate vampires for financial remuneration. And so the plot of this book is him trying to rid her of her vampire problem. But now, let's talk about the nitty gritty of this book. Let's talk about the component pieces that make this book up. The writing in Vampire Hunter D is not very good. In fact, it's pretty poor, but oddly, that kind of adds to the charm in a weird way. So, it's written in a kind of overwrought purple prose, kind of, and so many sentences, like narrative and descriptive sentences, end in exclamation marks, which you just don't do. And also, for a professionally published book, there are a lot of grammatical mistakes and typos in this, more than usual with a professionally published book. But yeah, the prose is just kind of, and of course, this is a translation. I don't speak Japanese, so this is, something may have gotten shifted around in translation, but the prose in English in this, at least, is kind of ridiculous. It's purpley, it's kind of overwrought, like I said, but again, it kind of adds to the charm in a weird way. So the writing not so great. There's times where the narration will just like ask the reader questions. It will be like, who could he have been referring to? I'm like, why are you asking me? I don't know. I'm just the reader. I don't know some of the answers to these questions that it's asking because it tries to do that to like build suspense, which is kind of a clumsy way to do that. And again, so many exclamation marks, and the dialogue in this is so corny at times. The vampires speak like literally right out of like a classic Universal horror movie from like the 40s and 50s. It's so it really is just kind of corny at times, but again, it just adds oddly to the charm, even though it is kind of not necessarily well done. But the characters in this book are also not very good. There's a little development with Doris, and there's kind of some dynamics between her and her little brother named Dan and Dee, some kind of budding romantic friction because Dee, the ladies just throw themselves at him in this book because he's like just unearthly handsome. Ladies do love the D, I suppose. So like all the female characters just hurl themselves at him, and he is literally the most blank slate of a character I think I've ever seen. He's very much in the vein of like the old Clint Eastwood man with no name type character. He's kind of a man of few words. He doesn't speak a lot, but and he's kind of stoic and reticent and mysterious, and we don't even know what his full name is. He just identifies himself as D. But there's a little bit of something to him, just a teensy bit, whenever Doris kind of throws herself at him and she's like, "You can sleep with me if you want." And then he like has to just barely restrain himself from just like sucking her dry because D in these books is himself a Dhampir, and if you don't know what that is in the folklore of certain European countries, a Dhampir is a half human, half vampire hybrid, and that's what D is in these books. So when Doris throws herself at him, he has to kind of like restrain himself from like just drinking her dry because he also has is part vampire. So there's kind of a little bit of something there where he has to like fight his darker urges. But still, he's by and large a complete blank slate. But what I also love about this book is the tone. It doesn't take itself that seriously. It's kind of, again, it's just incredibly pulpy. But there's like a there's a character in here. One of the antagonists is named Greco-Roman, like the pun, like Greco-Roman architecture and such. It's just I just love it's tongue in cheek a little bit. But anyway, so there's lots of action in this book. It's pretty exciting and it moves at a pretty quick clip. This is obviously a brick of a book because there's three books in this. But the first book is I think it was like 230 something pages long, not too long, and it moves at a pretty good clip. But again, the writing is just like this kind of ridiculous, overdone style of purple prose. The characters are clunky as hell, if they're even developed at all. And the dialogue is just like something right out of a old monster movie. But like I said, all that just somehow plays into the charm of it. Actually, it's just kind of it kind of wins you over. And of course, the uniqueness of the setting, and also there's just some really strange elements in this, which I didn't really expect. Like D has this little face. There's like a little person, a face that lives in the palm of his hand that he like talks to and can do like magic stuff with. It's so weird and kooky, but I just really loved it. It's just such a it just kind of goes for it. It really does. It has so many pulpy elements and it doesn't really take itself all that seriously. It just wants to be fun and it did succeed at being fun. But now let's talk about the films that have been based on these books, the way that I was actually introduced to these books. So there have been two Vampire Hunter D films. The original was initially came out in 1985. It's an anime film, and it's definitely a movie. That's about all I can say. Both of the films that have been based on this book, the original Vampire Hunter D and the later film called Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, are at present, at the time of this review, they are available to watch on YouTube. Some good-hearted people out there uploaded them to YouTube. Kudos for that. And the first movie, the 1985 one, I'm not going to recommend necessarily that you have to watch that one because again, it hasn't aged particularly well. Uh, it kind of embodies a lot of the seedier aspects of anime. Lots of upskirt panty shots and gratuitous exposure of breasts and everything. And considering that the girl in this book and subsequently in that movie is only 17, eh, that's kind of make of that what you will. But the second movie that has been based on the Vampire Hunter D books called Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust. Oh my goodness. That movie kicks ass. That movie is a true masterpiece. And if you have not seen Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, as soon as you get done with watching this review, as soon as this video is over, you get your ass out there and you watch Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust. Like I said, at present, it is available to watch for free here on YouTube, and you should absolutely watch it because, like I say, that movie just kicks so much ass. The animation is gorgeous. The characters are kind of on the flatter side, but there's enough to kind of get you invested, and the action it's just honestly kind of riveting. That is a true masterpiece of an anime film. Um, but this book here, to rate Vampire Hunter D, the first book, the inaugural book in the Vampire Hunter D book series, I'm going to give this book a C plus, and that's being incredibly generous with it. But I'm going to give it a C plus. Now, it was incredibly enjoyable, very kind of clunky in its execution, but I really did just love it. I just have a soft spot for books like this, kind of that are just so fun and kind of unput downable. And I think this book really qualifies. Have you read Vampire Hunter D? Have you read any of the Vampire Hunter D books? Let me know down in the comments if you have and whether you have agreed or disagreed with anything I've said here today. And if you have not read Vampire Hunter D, I can absolutely recommend it. Like I said, objectively, it's not a good book, but it's so fun and it's just something you can kind of lose yourself in. And, I've said in the past that I have not had much luck with um, fantasy books. Fantasy just really isn't my thing, but I think this may have remedied that because damn, this was fun to read and I loved it. So, Vampire Hunter D, I can absolutely recommend it. And as always, if you have enjoyed anything you've seen or heard here today, remember to hit that like button and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. And until next time, peace.